Dear colleagues, please take your seats. Welcome to the Hague, to Den Haag. It is a great pleasure to see representatives of our parliaments gathering together again. And let me begin by expressing our sincere thanks to our hosts for their outstanding work and dedication in organizing this 33rd annual session. And I would like to ask you an applause for that and for the host country. And I would now like to introduce our speakers this afternoon. We are honored to be joined by the President of the Senate, Meili Vos, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tom van Kampen. We also welcome the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Rob Jetten, and we are also deeply honored that President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine will address this session by video message. Also with us, the head of the Netherlands delegation to the OCPA, our dear colleague Farah Karimi, who has been instrumental in bringing this assembly to the Hague. I think he deserves an applause. And of course, on my left side, we have the pleasure of welcoming for the first time this afternoon, the OSCE Chair in Office, Swiss Federal Council, Ignacio Cassis. Thank you very much, Ignacio, for being here. And please note that following these opening addresses, we will question and answer session with the Chair in Office. The list of speakers for this session is now closed. We will then welcome the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Ms. Petra Beyer, and following her address, we will proceed to the consideration of the first of the supplementary items assigned to the plenary by the Standing Committee. This afternoon, we will consider the supplementary item entitled Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Committed, the need to release prisoners of war and civilian detainees and to ensure the return of Ukrainian children, proposed by Vice President Mikita Poturayev. And now, I first invite the President of the Senate, Her Excellency Meili Vos, to deliver her opening address. You have the floor.
Yes. Thank you so much for protocol. Mr. President, Excellencies, and members of the Parliamentary Assembly, dear attendees, welcome and welcome in The Hague. The city has been the political and administrative capital of the Netherlands for over 400 years. Internationally, it is the capital of peace and justice. Here, justice is done to ensure peace, to hold accountable those who have endangered it, and to resolve disputes between states peacefully. This system of international justice has its roots at the beginning of the 17th century. Hugo de Groot, or Grotius, his Latin name, was a public prosecutor in those days. His drive to advocate for international agreements on war and peace stemmed from his experiences in the court of Holland. Later, he himself was imprisoned as a political prisoner during the Dutch Revolt, the war between the Netherlands and Spain. And this made him all the more critical of rulers who put their own interests over the interests of peace for the people. In 1625, after his imprisonment, he published his book, The Law of War and Peace. Grotius addresses questions that remain relevant to this day. What is war? What is justice? Who has the right to wage war, and under what circumstances? What is permitted and what is prohibited in times of war? It was his conviction that everyone benefits from peace. Therefore, there must be an internationally recognized right to peace for all peoples, with rules when war may be waged. And there must also be an organization above all nations to regulate matters as part of international law, the current International Court of Justice. And thus, Grotius laid the foundations for international law as we know it. Fast forward from 1625 to 1899 to the first Hague Peace Conference. 26 countries from around the world gathered for the first time to discuss disarmament and international law. The conference was a response to the growing concern about the arms race and the possibility of war in Europe. The conference reflected the growing interest in international law and the need for a system of international justice. And since 1899, many organizations have established themselves here in The Hague, such as the Peace Palace that houses the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the United Nations International Court of Justice, and the Hague Academy of International Law. The Hague is also the home of the International Criminal Court. In the 127 years that have passed since the first Hague Peace Conference, we have seen outbreaks of war and the establishment of peace throughout the world. Past conflicts have in the end resulted in multilateral frameworks, such as the European Union and the United Nations, and also organizations like the Council of Europe and the OSCE. They were established to serve as multilateral fora for dialogue. And as I am well aware, these developments have not prevented new wars or old conflicts resurfacing. They put pressure on these fora and on international law. They urge us to reaffirm international cooperation and to continue striving for peace. Upholding international law is our best chance of ensuring peace. Dear attendees, Article 90 of the Dutch Constitution calls on the government to promote the development of international legal order. It is the duty of Parliament to ensure our governments fulfill that task. Democracy benefits from continuous discussion within these institutions, from power and the power being challenged. Conflicts can be prevented by creating the circumstances for a free and democratic debate. I'd rather have people engage in heated verbal debate than take up arms. And instead of creating the conditions for conflicts, we need to create the conditions for debate. And that is why the work of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is important. In this forum, you provide those conditions to use words instead of weapons. Grotius noted that when used, force must always be proportionate to the objective. And these principles are just as relevant today as they were 400 years ago. They define our international legal order. And this is why it's so fitting that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly convenes here in the international capital of peace and justice. I wish you a fruitful annual session. Dank u wel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam President. I now invite the President of the House of Representatives of the Netherlands, His Excellency Tom van Kampen, to deliver his opening address. You have the floor. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, members of the Parliamentary Assembly, dear attendees. As the President of the House of Representatives of the Netherlands, it is a privilege to welcome you to The Hague, the international city of peace and justice. The President of the Dutch Senate has just reminded us of Hugo Grotius, whose ideas laid the foundations of international law. Please allow me to build on that thought. Law indeed provides the foundation, but every foundation needs a house. And that house is built by institutions. And institutions are brought to life by people. More than a century ago, our fellow Dutchman Tobias Asser understood exactly that. Asser knew that peace could never depend on legal principles alone. It also required institutions where countries would continue to meet, continue to listen, and continue to work together, especially when agreement proved difficult. And that conviction shaped his life's work. Tobias Asser initiated the Hague Conference on Private International Law, helped bring the first Hague Peace Conference to The Hague in 1899, and in 1911 became the first and to this day the only Dutch recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Asser never imagined a world without differences. He knew such a world does not exist. His great contribution was to show that lasting peace is built when institutions make cooperation possible despite those differences. In many ways, that is why we are here today. As parliamentarians, we understand this instinctively. And one of the things I have learned, both as a member of parliament and as president of the House of Representatives, is that yesterday's opponents can become today's partners in solving a different problem. Every day we represent people with different experiences, interests, and convictions. We debate, we persuade and negotiate. Sometimes we compromise, sometimes we do not. Our responsibility is not simply to express different views, but to look for common ground and workable solutions. What we learn every day in each of our national parliaments, we are called upon to practice here during the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. About 250 parliamentarians from 52 participating states have gathered here today in The Hague. We bring different histories, different political traditions, different cultures, and different security perspectives. Few parliamentary gatherings bring together such diversity. And exactly that is the OSCE's greatest strength. The value of this assembly is not that it removes differences. Its value is that it enables cooperation despite them. It offers something increasingly precious in today's world, a place where elected parliamentarians and representatives continue to meet, continue to listen, and continue to build relationships across borders, especially when tensions are high. It goes without saying that in today's world, those tensions are very real indeed. Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine continues to violate international law and threaten the security of our continent. At the same time, we face a range of other challenges that no nation can solve alone. Hybrid threats, cyber attacks, artificial intelligence, climate change, and competition over critical resources. They require cooperation, they require trust, and they require strong international institutions. That is why parliamentary diplomacy matters. It builds relationships that outlast political cycles, deepen mutual understanding, and keep channels of communication open, especially when they are needed most. More than a century has passed since Tobias Osser received the Nobel Peace Prize, and the world has changed beyond recognition ever since. But the question that inspired his life's work remains the same. How do we continue to work together when our interests differ? How do we preserve dialogue when tensions rise? And how do we strengthen international law when it comes under pressure? Those questions cannot be answered by governments alone. They also require parliamentarians who are willing to meet, to listen, and to keep the conversation alive. Over the coming days, you will not agree on everything, and that's only natural. But if these days deepen our mutual understanding, strengthen relationships, and reinforce our shared commitment to our cooperation under international law, they will have achieved something of lasting value. I hope you will leave not only with new ideas, but with stronger relationships. Hugo Grotius gave us a foundation. Tobias Osser helped build the house. And it is now our responsibility to make that house a home for dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, President Van Kampen. And now I invite Prime Minister Jetten to deliver his opening address. Mr. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Hague and welcome to the Netherlands. For over a century, The Hague has been the place where the international community gathers to prevent conflict, to resolve disputes, and to hold to account those responsible for the gravest of crimes. And just a short distance from here, you will find the institutions that embody the rule of law in international affairs. The Peace Palace, the International Court of Justice, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the International Criminal Court, and many other tribunals and organizations dedicated to peace and security. So as a figure of speech, you could say that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is coming home these days. And I sure hope you will feel at home, and we are honored to have you here in The Hague. The Hague is proud to call itself the International City of Peace and Justice, but it's also a city where people from many countries live side by side and where different cultures, languages, and traditions meet in peace every day. And I think that embodies what lies at the heart of the OSCE commitments, namely that open, democratic societies where people of different backgrounds live together side by side provide safety and security for their citizens. And you, as representatives of your national parliaments, carry a special responsibility in this respect. One of the household names in the history of the OSCE is that of the Dutch top diplomat Max van der Stoel, the first High Commissioner on National Minorities. He once told how he started in this job with almost nothing, just a small office, a secretary, 3-second staff, and vaguely defined mandates. And it proved a blessing in disguise because it gave Van der Stoel the freedom to step in wherever ethnic tensions arose. And being the experienced diplomat he was, he organized enough international support to be highly successful in his work. And that role, modest in means, but significant in impact, is what still characterizes the OSCE today. The organization was founded on the premise that security cannot be built with use of force, but must rest on democracy, respect for human rights, and a rules-based international order. Yet, we meet at a time when these foundations are under tremendous strain throughout the entire OSCE area. On the European continent, Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine is not only the largest threat to Europe's collective security, It is also a direct attack on the principles that underpin this organization as set out in the Helsinki Final Act. And the same principles according to which Ukraine has a right to sovereignty and territorial integrity and to choose its own alliances and its own future. So it is of the utmost importance that we keep in mind at all times that Ukraine is not only defending its own territory and its own citizens, it is defending peace and security on our continent. And it's defining the international rules-based order, including the OSCE and the commitments that we've all signed up to. That is why the Netherlands stands firmly with Ukraine and will continue to do so. It is crucial that we all stay the course and maintain momentum in supporting Ukraine and increasing pressure on Russia, because it has proven to work. We need European unity on all stages, including at the OSCE, to maximize pressure on Putin and to force Russia to end this war. We need to show Putin his only way forward is through an immediate ceasefire and to engage in meaningful negotiations towards a just and lasting peace. And I call upon you to send this strong message from The Hague to Moscow. And I call upon Russia to immediately release the 3 OSCE officials that are unlawfully detained in Russia. And I will mention their names. Vadim Golda, Maxim Petrov, and Dmitry Shabanov need to be reunited with their families as soon as possible, and some of them are present here today. Mr. Cassis, as you've recently said yourself, and I quote, "When diplomacy seems impossible, it becomes indispensable." And you were absolutely right. The need for strong diplomacy is stronger than ever before in the history of the OSCE. And although engaging in dialogue across such a diverse group of countries has never been easy, it has always been essential for stability and security in the OSCE area. What we have here is a unique forum, a bridge between the East and the West, where participating countries can still come together to discuss their shared security. And I sincerely hope that the outcome of this Parliamentary Assembly will show that we stand united in this. I wish you all the best of success and a marvelous time here in The Hague. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Prime Minister. Colleagues, we will now turn to President Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, who has recorded a video address for this session.
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention to Ukraine and for your support for our people. Right now, I'm in Odessa, our southern city. It's our largest and most important port and a beautiful city open to the world, which Russia desperately wanted to cut off from the sea and destroy. Odessa, like all of Ukraine, is under constant Russian missile and drone attacks. Here, more than anywhere, you can feel how much we need to protect lives. Here and in our other cities, like Dnipro, Sumy, Kharkiv, Kiev, the rescue operation following Russia's overnight attack from Wednesday into Thursday was completed only late yesterday evening. Our rescuers have been searching through the rubble of ordinary apartment buildings destroyed in the massive Russian strike, looking for the bodies of those who were killed. 30 people were killed by the Russian attack. My condolences to all their families and loved ones. Nearly 100 people were injured. It was one of the most painful and devastating landscape has seen in a long time. Russia used many ballistic missiles. They had been stockpiling them for this attack. They also launched hundreds of drones, including jet-powered Shaheeds, and we are finding ways to stop Shaheeds. We consistently shoot down at least 90% of them, 90, but missiles are a much bigger challenge. And we are finding ways to intercept cruise missiles as well. But Russia is using ballistic missiles as its final argument to keep this war going. That is where they are placing their bet. They want ballistic missiles to break our resistance and the will of the Ukrainian people. That is why we need more air defense. It's about protecting lives every single day. Ukraine critically needs Patriot interceptors, and we all know our partners have them. What is needed now is the political will to provide them, first and foremost in the United States. Please help make this happen. Yesterday, I also spoke with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Rob. I would be very grateful if you could help with this protection with Patriot interceptors. Today, I discussed this with Chancellor Merz as well, and we will continue working with our other partners. And of course, with President Trump. Today is America's Independence Day, and America, together with the free world, can help us secure our independence from Russian killers, from this terrible Russian desire to destroy human life. Please continue to speak out clearly against Russian terror and keep highlighting Ukraine's need for air defense. We are also doing a lot on the battlefield and through long-range pressure on Russia to make it harder for Russia to hold our occupied territories, harder to wage this war, and harder to keep refusing negotiations. And this effort must be backed by sanctions against Russia. Please do not reduce sanctions pressure. Introduce new sanctions so Russia has fewer ways to adapt to this war and is forced to move toward negotiations. And it's especially important to put pressure on Russia's oil sector. It simply cannot survive without free access for its oil through European seas. This is a critical route. If it is cut off, Russia will lose its ability to finance this war. So every country that stops tankers from Russia's shadow fleet is making a real contribution to ending this war. Europe should also have the legal tools to confiscate and sell the oil carried by the shadow fleet. The shadow fleet must not be allowed to finance Russia's war. Strong measures like these can help bring peace closer. Please support them politically. And the third point, which is absolutely essential, Russia's war must never be normalized. Russia is making great efforts to restore its political ties and regain political influence. It uses media pressure and works to destabilize those European voices that speak honestly about this war, that want a stronger Europe united and at peace, and that defend our shared way of life. I'm grateful to everyone who refuses to stay silent when Russia kills, to everyone who supports Ukraine and encourages others to help us protect lives, to everyone who is making Europe stronger. So, for our part, we are doing everything we can to defend Ukraine, all of Europe, and the European way of life. Please stay active. Please help us bring our people home from Russian captivity, our children, prisoners of war, civilian hostages, including 3 OSCE officials. And please keep helping us protect our people through your political leadership and practical decisions. Please also support our efforts for diplomacy so that this war ends through negotiations and not through more destruction, which is exactly what Russia wants. Help make sure our air defense, our Patriot systems never run out of the missiles they need. That is what saves lives. Thank you so much. May life prevail. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for taking the floor at the Parliamentary Assembly, and I would like to invite now the head of the delegation of the Netherlands to the RCPA, Farah Karimi, to deliver her opening address. Farah, you have the floor.
Oh, okay. President of the Senate, Ms. Miley Vos, President of the House of Representatives, Mr. Tom van Kampen, Prime Minister, Mr. Rob Jetten, OSCE Chairman in Office, Minister Ignacio Casas, President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Mr. Pere Pons, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. We gather today in The Hague, the international city of peace and justice, at a time when both are under profound pressure. On behalf of the Netherlands delegation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the annual session of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly 2026. Before I continue, let me offer a special greeting to our American friends. Today, the United States celebrates the 25th anniversary of its independence. Congratulations and happy 4th of July. The Declaration of Independence proclaimed that all people are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. Those ideals have inspired democratic movements around the world for 2.5 centuries. They continue to challenge all of us to live up to them. Ladies and gentlemen, having served this assembly in different capacities over many years and having visited many of your countries, it is a particular privilege to welcome you to my own city. The Hague reminds us that peace is more than the absence of war and justice more than an aspiration. Both require strong institutions, political courage, and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. That commitment is urgently needed. The international order is under severe strain. Russia's continuing aggression against Ukraine remains the gravest threat to security in our region, violating the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the peaceful settlement of dispute. Beyond our own region, the devastating violence in Lebanon, Gaza, and West Bank continues to claim an unbearable human toll. The recent escalation in the Middle East has shown once again how quickly regional conflicts can threaten global stability, disrupt economies, and undermine confidence in diplomacy and international law. Whether in Ukraine, Middle East, Sudan, or elsewhere, civilians pay the highest price when international law is ignored. International law cannot be applied selectively. If we expect states to respect the rules, those rules must apply equally to all. Otherwise, we weaken not only international institutions, but also the trust of our citizens we represent. Meanwhile, another crisis continues to reshape our common security. Across the OSCE region, from North America to Europe, the Caucasus and Central Asia, extreme heat, drought, floods, and wildfires are placing growing pressure on water, food, and energy security. Climate change is not only an environmental challenge, it is a security challenge. These developments remind us why the OSCE's comprehensive concept of security remains so relevant. Lasting security depends not only on military strength, but also on democracy, human rights, the rule of law, economic resilience, environmental sustainability, and resilient societies. This is where parliamentary diplomacy has a unique role. Even when governments disagree, parliamentarians can continue to engage. Through dialogue, election observation, committee work, and cooperation across political divides, we preserve channels of communication and build trust. I have witnessed this throughout the OSCE region, including in Central Asia, where parliamentary cooperation continues to strengthen regional dialogue and support local communities. But dialogue alone is not enough. The declarations and resolutions we adopt here must shape legislation, strengthen democratic oversight, and inform the policies of our governments. Last year in Porto, we reaffirmed our commitment to the fundamental principles of the OSCE: respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and international cooperation. The Porto Declaration, like the declarations that preceded it, reminds us that these are not abstract principles, but shared commitments. I hope the declaration we adopt here in The Hague will reaffirm that same conviction, that lasting peace and security can only be built on respect for international law, democracy, and human dignity. Colleagues, peace, security, and cooperation cannot be taken for granted. They require political courage, consistency, and a willingness to defend the principles we have all committed ourselves to uphold. As we begin this annual session, let us use these days not only to debate, but also to listen. Let us seek common ground where we can, speak honestly where we disagree, and strengthen the trust that makes cooperation possible. The OSCE was created because our predecessors understood a simple truth: security cannot endure without cooperation, and cooperation cannot endure without trust. Rebuilding that trust is perhaps the greatest task before us today. Let us approach it with honesty, courage, and the conviction that dialogue, even when difficult, is always stronger than silence. I wish you all a productive and inspiring session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karimi. And I now invite the OSCE Chair in Office, Federal Councillor Ignacio Cassis, to deliver his opening address. Ignacio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, please switch to French in your iPhones if you need to understand me. Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée parlementaire, Monsieur le Premier ministre de l'Hollande, Madame et Messieurs les présidents des chambres du Parlement hollandais, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de l'Assemblée parlementaire, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est une occasion unique et importante de m'adresser à vous aujourd'hui en tant que président en exercice de l'OSCE. Avec la montée des tensions géopolitiques, les questions de sécurité et de défense du continent européen sont de plus en plus discutées au sein des parlements nationaux. En tant qu'élus nationaux, siégeant au sein de cette Assemblée, vous représentez les relais essentiels pour ces thèmes auprès de la population de vos États. Ce lien parlementaire est capital alors que nous traversons une période de défiance croissante, comme on vient de l'écouter de la part de la présidente de l'Assemblée hollandaise, envers les institutions, une défiance envers les institutions et les responsables politiques, et que la sécurité européenne vit sa crise la plus profonde depuis la fin de la guerre froide. Mesdames et Messieurs, la guerre menée par la Russie contre l'Ukraine fait rage depuis 4 ans. La Suisse la condamne avec la plus grande fermeté, ainsi que les souffrances qu'elle inflige au peuple ukrainien. Nous réitérons également notre appel en faveur de la libération immédiate des 3 collaborateurs de notre organisation détenus par la Russie, et je salue une des épouses qui est dans cette salle. Cette guerre touche notre organisation au cœur. Le consensus qui faisait notre force s'est érodé. Notre capacité d'action s'est réduite. Notre confiance a été profondément atteinte. Aujourd'hui, à mi-parcours de la présidence suisse, cette rencontre nous offre l'occasion de nous poser une question simple. Que peut encore apporter l'OSCE à la sécurité de notre continent? L'histoire européenne nous l'a appris. Les périodes les plus dangereuses ne sont pas celles où les désaccords existent. Ce sont celles où les canaux de communication disparaissent. C'est précisément pour cette raison que l'OSCE est indispensable. Car qui réunit encore 57 États autour de la même table? Qui offre encore un espace où tous peuvent s'exprimer? Qui dispose encore d'instruments conçus pour renforcer la transparence et réduire les risques d'escalade? L'OSCE est la réponse. À celles et ceux qui doutent aujourd'hui de sa pertinence, je répondrai simplement: si la confrontation est de retour en Europe, alors la raison d'être de l'OSCE l'est également. Mesdames et Messieurs, depuis le début de l'année, la présidence suisse travaille sans relâche pour réaffirmer le rôle de notre organisation et la faire reconnaître comme un acteur efficace, crédible, réactif. Mais préserver l'OSCE ne consiste pas seulement à défendre sa raison d'être. Cela exige aussi un travail concret. Tout d'abord, après plusieurs années de blocage, nous avons obtenu l'adoption du budget 2026. Ce résultat permet à notre organisation de fonctionner et donc d'assumer son mandat. Il envoie aussi un signal important, même dans un contexte de confrontation, les 57 États participants sont capables de trouver un consensus et restent prêts à se réunir autour de notre table. Deuxièmement, la présidence suisse poursuit un objectif central: faire en sorte que notre organisation soit prête lorsque les circonstances politiques permettront de nouveaux progrès vers la paix entre la Russie et l'Ukraine. Dès le mois de février, je me suis rendu à Kiev ainsi qu'à Moscou avec le secrétaire général Sinirioglu. Je l'ai fait parce que je pense que la Suisse pense que le dialogue, même difficile, reste préférable à des monologues parallèles qui n'apportent ni confiance ni solution. Avec le secrétaire général et les structures compétentes, nous préparons activement l'OSCE à assumer pleinement les responsabilités qui relèvent de son mandat lorsque les conditions politiques le permettront entre la Russie et l'Ukraine. Mesdames et messieurs, nous ne savons pas quand ce moment viendra, mais nous savons qu'il serait irresponsable de l'attendre sans être prêt, sans préparation. Le jour où une fenêtre d'opportunité s'ouvrira, l'OSCE devra être prête. Et elle le sera. Mesdames et messieurs les parlementaires, nous avons également engagé des réformes afin d'adapter notre organisation aux défis actuels, notamment en réfléchissant à l'avenir des missions de terrain. J'ai d'ailleurs personnellement visité les missions de l'OSCE de Bosnie-Herzégovine et en Moldova. J'ai également prévu de me rendre en Asie centrale et dans le Caucase du Sud dans la deuxième moitié de l'année. Car la crédibilité de l'OSCE ne se mesure pas uniquement à l'action de son siège, ni de son assemblée parlementaire. Elle se mesure surtout à sa capacité d'agir sur le terrain. Je veux toutefois être lucide. Nous pouvons mieux faire. Dans la seconde partie de sa présidence, la Suisse est déterminée à rendre l'OSCE et ses instruments plus efficaces. Cela vaut notamment pour les missions d'observation des élections. C'était précisément l'objet de la récente réunion dite 2+2 entre les présidents du Conseil de l'Europe et de notre organisation, ainsi que leurs secrétaires généraux lors de ma visite à Chisinau en mai dernier. L'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OSCE, tout comme celle du Conseil de l'Europe, joignent souvent leurs efforts à ceux de l'ODIHR. Cette diversité de regards est une richesse, mais peut parfois être aussi un défi. Ensemble, nous avons convenu de poursuivre nos travaux pour davantage de complémentarité, moins de doublons, plus de valeur ajoutée entre nos deux organisations. Votre rôle, mesdames et messieurs, en tant qu'Assemblée parlementaire, Monsieur le Président, sera fondamental pour permettre à nos organisations de gagner en efficacité. Je compte sur vous pour accompagner les réflexions de la présidence suisse. Mesdames et messieurs, depuis 6 mois, la présidence suisse ne cherche pas à masquer les différences entre membres de l'organisation. Elle cherche à préserver ce qui nous permet encore de les gérer sans escalade. Dans les 6 prochains mois, nous poursuivrons notre travail pour préserver et faire vivre les acquis de notre organisation, certes imparfaite, insuffisante, mais unique. Je vous remercie de votre attention et je me réjouis d'accueillir les membres de votre bureau à Lugano, en Suisse, à l'occasion du Conseil ministériel de l'OSCE en décembre prochain. Merci pour votre attention.
Je voulais tout d'abord, M. Cassis, vous remercier d'être là en tant que chair in office de l'OCE. Et je voudrais vous dire que c'est vrai qu'il n'y a pas souvent 57 participant states se mettre ensemble, mais aussi je voudrais vous dire que vous avez aussi une plateforme parlementaire avec plus de 300 parlementaires qui, je pense, pensent comme vous. Et j'ai retenu l'idée qu'on peut mieux faire. Et je pense qu'ensemble, on peut vraiment mieux faire. Donc, à nouveau, grand merci d'être là avec nous aujourd'hui. Si vous me permettez aussi, je vais parler en anglais d'abord et après je vais finir avec ma langue. And dear colleagues, first I would really like to thank the authorities of the Netherlands, both the President of the House of Representatives, the President of the Senate, and of course the Prime Minister, also Prime Minister, for mentioning the names of the persons who still are imprisoned, Maxime, Dimitro, and Vladim. And I think we always remember and remind that they are still in prison. So thank you again, Prime Minister, for telling the names and for not forgetting. So thank you. And also let me start with the Netherlands because, as the Dutch writer says, Notenboom once wrote of his homeland, and I'm a follower of this writer, the Netherlands, a land without mountains, without hidden caves, with nothing to conceal, no dark corners of the soul. It is fitting that this assembly gathers in a country whose own self-image is one of the openness and transparency values that the OCPA holds at its core. And I quoted Ches Notenboom because he passed away this February in Minorca, which is my constituency, the constituency that I have the honor to represent, the Balearic Islands. And for me, of course, Ches Notenboom leaves a literary legacy that reaches far beyond the Netherlands, and I think he's a universal writer. And as I'm going to conclude this first part, and then we'll have a break, a technical break, I would like to ask you to reflect on what weighs most heavily on the minds of our citizens, the citizens that the parliamentarians represent here. And I would like to say that from Vancouver to Vladivostok, I believe one feeling is shared across our region. I would say uncertainty. Uncertainty about a world that increasingly places its faith in the argument of force rather than the force of argument, where democracy and international law are under huge pressure and where too many people feel uncertain about the future. And faced with this uncertainty, our responsibility as parliamentarians, as politicians, must be clear, and we are all here, most of us politicians, to place human dignity at the center of our work so that people can live in security, freedom, and peace. And this is one of the messages that the Holy Father delivered in our parliament, in the Parliament of Spain, very recently. Because lasting security is not built by walls, not guaranteed by rearmament. It is built on justice, dialogue, respect for international law, and the political courage to defend them. That is why this assembly matters. And just 50 years after the Helsinki Final Act, the principles that underpin our common security are being openly challenged. We see it in the continued war of aggression against Ukraine. We see it in Gaza, where civilians continue to suffer, of course, in both territories. We see it wherever force replaces dialogue and international law is applied selectively or not at all. There can be no hierarchy of principles. What we defend in Ukraine, we must defend it everywhere. Without consistency, we weaken the rule-based order. That is precisely the responsibility of this assembly. Over the past year, we have been present where we were needed most, supporting Ukraine and the pursuit of a just and lasting peace, facilitating dialogue in Georgia, strengthening democracy through election observation, and maintaining our engagement in the Middle East. We have also continued to address the Mediterranean as well. We have also continued to address challenges such as migration, equality, artificial intelligence, disinformation, and climate change, as Farah Karimi mentioned, recognizing them as interconnected challenges to a common security. And if you let me, I will end my speech in Spanish. Los principios de Helsinki dependen, primer ministro, de nuestra voluntad política, de defenderlos sin excepciones e invertir en el diálogo y en las instituciones que lo hacen realidad. Ese debe ser y debe seguir siendo nuestro objetivo, estar presentes allí donde los conflictos amenazan la seguridad de las personas, llevando diálogo, la fuerza de la razón y un compromiso firme con la paz. Porque los mayores logros de nuestra historia nunca han sido fruto de esfuerzos aislados, sino de la capacidad de actuar juntos. Solo si permanecemos fieles a ese camino, estaremos a la altura de las expectativas de los más de 1.000 millones de ciudadanos a quienes tenemos el honor de representar. Porque la seguridad que buscamos no se alcanzará solo con palabras, sino con las decisiones que seamos capaces de tomar juntos. Y permítanme que antes de terminar felicite a la delegación de Estados Unidos por su aniversario. Agradezco mucho que la delegación esté aquí y realmente congratulations y espero que el resto de la delegación pueda aterrizar en cuanto antes. Por tanto, muchísimas gracias. Ahora vamos a hacer un pequeño break. We're going to do a very short technical break to let the Prime Minister and the rest of the authorities leave the room. But we have a bunch of questions to the Chairman in office that he will answer all the questions that you requested and you submitted before. So thank you very much again to the Netherlands authorities. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Farah, for organizing such a magnificent meeting. Thank you very much. Maybe it's better if I just one sec. Dear colleagues, pazienza, no? Dear colleagues, please take a seat. Please, we have the questions to the chairman in office. The former president.
Good that you're here today.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
So you're still member of the
Yeah.
Parliamentary Assembly,
Yes,
Spanish delegation.
yes.
Great. Well,
Not Spanish.
So, dear delegate.
so I was wondering, Spanish.
They're still here.
It's not.
Wait. Dear members of the Parliamentary Assembly, I would like to ask you to take a seat. I think it's really important that we can submit questions to Minister and the chairmanship person in office. And we have 5 questions, I think. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Would you mind to take the floor? Would you mind to take a seat, please, if you don't mind? I would like to first, if you don't mind, I think it's better that the 5 questions are raised together, one after another, and maybe the chairman in office will answer all together, or as you wish, actually. So the first question on the list is a question from the Austrian delegation. Ms. Gudrun Kugler is in the room. Yes, Gudrun, thank you very much for submitting the question. You have the floor, but I really would like to ask you if you can take your seats, because I think it's a very important moment for us to have the time to have an interaction with the chairman in office. So Gudrun, you have the floor. Thank you very much again for the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here, and The Hague is a great location for this conference, so thank you so much for going through the effort. I was very happy to hear in most of the speeches in the opening session how important parliamentary diplomacy is. And I've been lucky to serve this assembly here for several years, and I've experienced myself how important it is, and I'm so glad to be part of it. I'm also glad, Mr. Chairperson in office, that you spoke of more exchange between our organizations. I think this is extremely important. I encourage the members of the Parliamentary Assembly to visit field missions. It just changes the perception of our work. And I would also like to encourage that we share more expertise. Because for me, as a special representative on demographic change, I have worked with ODIHR, for example, on the effect of demographic change on democracy. And I found this exchange very helpful. So, dear Chairperson in office, I would like to ask your thoughts on the question of demographic change, demographic decline, with regard to security and democracy, because I think that population decline and the changes we see currently in the OSCE region pose several difficulties for many countries in the regions. In the St. Gallen Symposium, dear Chairperson Office, you said very interesting things about the necessity of intergenerational contract, of taking all generations into account. So I'm very glad you said this, and I would be happy to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. Mr. Cassis said that he's going to reply one after another, so he has the floor first. Thank you, Mr. Cassis.
Grazie, Signor Presidente. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour votre question, Madame la représentante de la délégation autrichienne. Votre question est fondamentale, surtout parce qu'elle est posée par un membre d'un Parlement qui est directement élu par la population. Vous posez la question comment prendre au sérieux l'évolution démocratique et comment s'adapter à l'évolution démocratique. Ma vision des choses et la manière de lire la réalité en Suisse est la suivante. Le monde est entré dans une phase de changement profonde. Non pas parce que les institutions le veuillent, non pas parce que les mécanismes légaux le veuillent, mais parce que les personnes, les êtres humains, les hommes et les femmes sont en train de changer. Et donc, les institutions ne peuvent qu'être le réflexe de ce changement. Les institutions ont la tendance à se défendre par rapport au changement. Et c'est le moment de crise des démocraties. Et on est dans un moment de crise de la démocratie. Ce que l'OSCE peut faire, c'est être honnête, avoir des représentants qui représentent leur pays de manière correcte et accepter que tous les pays ne se trouvent pas au même niveau, au même stade de maturation et d'avancement dans leur démocratie. Accepter qu'il y a des pays dont la démocratie est plus jeune, peut-être plus fragile, d'autres, comme le mien, où elle est très vieille et peut-être à cause de ça fragile. Je crois qu'il faut beaucoup d'honnêteté et de modestie et ne pas prétendre d'avoir une recette magique qui doit s'adapter de manière uniforme à tous les êtres humains et les êtres humains, même pas à l'intérieur du continent européen. Figurez-vous donc au niveau mondial. Dans mon travail de ministre des Affaires étrangères depuis 9 ans, j'ai beaucoup parlé avec des collègues de toute la planète et je me rends compte quel est l'état d'avancement du discours démocratique, par exemple, dans des pays où la démocratie n'existe pas vraiment, ou pas du tout. Eh bien, il ne s'agit pas de leur donner des leçons, mais de leur donner des informations qui leur permettent de comprendre comment nous nous organisons et comment nous voulons nous voir dans le futur. L'avantage de cet État, avec ses 57 pays, c'est justement sa diversité. Il serait erroné, il serait faux de vouloir faire fonctionner cette organisation de manière totalement alignée avec l'Union européenne, qui a 26 membres. Ce n'est pas réalistique. À ce moment-là, on n'aurait plus besoin de cette organisation. Et je vous ai parlé dans mon discours des doublons avec le Conseil de l'Europe, qui n'a pas non plus la même base, mais avec lequel il y a des complémentarités intéressantes et importantes à exploiter. Vous voyez, je veux conclure en vous disant, je pense que dans ce moment de changement mondial, le moment est venu, et c'est aujourd'hui et pas ce soir ou demain, c'est maintenant, de mettre main à nos institutions et de les adapter à ce nouveau monde. Et c'est exactement ce que la présidence suisse cherche à faire, sachant que pendant une année, on ne pourra pas faire des miracles. Mais si on fait 2 pas en avant, on est déjà content.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Cassis. Et vous avez mentionné le Conseil de l'Europe et je voudrais aussi partager qu'on est avec la présidente de la parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe qui va pouvoir s'adresser après. Et maintenant, je voudrais passer la parole. I would like to give the floor to Pavlo Frolov from Ukraine, who also wants to raise a question. So I don't know where he is because I cannot.
Thank you,
Please,
Mr. President.
If you can raise the question, Pablo, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dear Mr. Cases, you mentioned about very sensitive and important case of the 3 OSCE officials. They were in the status of international observers with a correspondent mandate. They were captured and jailed in violation of international law. This fact is undermining the status of all international monitoring missions. The release of Dmitro Shabanov, Maxim Petrov, and Vadim Golda is a genuine precondition and a real test for whether agreement and implementation of a ceasefire monitoring mechanism is possible at all, and for Russia's readiness to actually respect such a regime. It is also a moral obligation for the states on whose decision the life and safety of OSCE staff and of the future monitors of any new mechanism already depend. My question is simple but important. Have you raised the issue of the release of the Mr. Shabanov, Mr. Golda, and Mr. Petrov during your visit to Moscow? And what will be the next steps for their release? Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Paolo. Thank you very much for your words. And Monsieur Cassis has la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Frolov de l'Ukraine, merci pour votre question qui est simple et fondamentale, comme vous l'avez bien souligné avec vos mots. La réponse à votre question est simple, oui. Mais je ne m'arrête pas là. On a soulevé cette question lors de notre visite à Moscou. On soulève tout le temps cette question lors de nos dialogues à Vienne, aussi avec l'ambassadeur russe. Et c'est une question sur laquelle le secrétaire général de l'OSCE, Feridun Tsirilioglu, travaille de manière assidue et a fait des progrès très importants aussi dernièrement. J'ai moi-même pu rencontrer une de ces 3 femmes des prisonniers à Kiev au début de cette année. J'ai parlé avec elle, j'ai vu quel est le désarroi de cette personne et bien évidemment que je suis touché et on fera tout le possible et on reste sur ce dossier. Évidemment, on n'a pas là non plus la baguette magique pour dire on résout la question avec un toc de baguette magique. Mais soyez rassurés que la question reste urgente et importante dans l'agenda de l'OSCE à Vienne.
Merci, Monsieur Cassis. Je voudrais passer la parole à Madame Heidi Fry. Dear Heidi, Madame Fry, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Before I begin to ask a question, I would like to congratulate Farah and the Netherlands for a wonderful reception. It was absolutely perfect when we arrived. Everything was just so. So now I'd like to ask Mr. Cassis a question. Mr. Cassis, I am the OSCE-PA's gender representative, and I sent you a letter with regard to the issue of your not having appointed a gender representative for the OSCE during your term. You were very kind enough to send me a letter in response, and you said in your response that in line with the 5 priorities of Switzerland for its 2026 OSCE chairpersonship, the gender consideration will remain an important cross-cutting issue. And you confirmed that regardless this will happen, and that Switzerland will continue to promote across all 3 OSCE dimensions. I found that response, though I thank you for it, to be a little confusing. So I would like to ask you specifically, how will gender considerations be integrated into Switzerland's 5 priorities? Could you give me a specific example, for instance, about
how it will remain at the forefront of the OSCE 3 dimensions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Fry, and the Chairman in office has the floor.
Je remercie Madame Heidi Fry du Canada pour cette question. Je peux vous répondre sur la même base de la lettre que je vous ai écrite le 13 mai de cette année, en vous disant que la question de l'égalité des genres est une question importante pour la Suisse. Elle est inscrite dans, par exemple, nos lignes directrices pour les droits humains. Elle est appliquée avec des mesures et avec des institutions à l'intérieur de nos ministères, de l'administration fédérale, et on utilise exactement la même mesure dans la conduite de notre présidence à l'OSCE. Concrètement, cela signifie être attentif, par exemple, qu'il y ait une parité des genres la meilleure possible, par exemple dans les commissions, dans les membres qui composent les organes, dans les organisations de terrain, etc., etc. Donc, elle n'est pas une priorité en elle-même, parce que la Suisse est convaincue que cette époque est résolue à l'intérieur de l'OSCE, mais elle devient une priorité transversale qui est présente dans tout le travail que nous faisons à n'importe quel niveau et dans n'importe quelle situation. Et c'est la même attitude que la Suisse a aussi sur le plan national.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the answer. And I would like to also give the floor to Carina de Brink from Sweden. Carina, dear Carina, you have the floor for the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first, I want to thank you, all representatives of the Netherlands, for your very important remarks and for hosting us here. Thank you for that. Dear Chairperson in Office of the OSCE, I actually have almost the same question as Dr. Hedi Fry. Today, we can see women's rights, or let me say it like this. Women's rights are human rights. LGBTQI persons' rights are human rights. Today, we can see a decline of the rights of both women and LGBTQI persons. The OSCE has long maintained gender equality as a core, non-negotiable pillar as its security landscape, exemplified by appointing a special representative on gender issues. This has been the ongoing process since 2010, yet under the chairpersonship's leadership, the position of special representative on gender issues remains vacant, and at a time of severe regional instability and heightened risk for women and children in conflict zones. And I thank you for the answer, Mr. Cassis, but I see the risk if you don't have women's rights, LGBTQI rights high on the agenda and to say it and to see it. I am afraid that these issues will come in the background. So if you please can say something more about this, because of course the gender issues must be visible in all political areas, but I would like to hear something more from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. The Chairman in office has the floor. Thank you.
Oui, merci. Merci à vous aussi, Madame Öderbrink de Suède, pour continuer la question qui a été posée par le Canada auparavant. Voyez-vous, la première question de cette heure de questions avait été dédiée au fait, à la question comment adapter nos organisations à l'évolution des démocraties. Comment ne pas rester immobile sur une question et ne pas s'adapter, c'est la meilleure. Si on reste immobile et on ne s'adapte pas, c'est la meilleure manière de laisser mourir l'organisation. Et nous avons fixé des priorités qui sont 5 priorités, qui sont claires et qui ne sont là pour la galerie, mais on essaie d'y être très précis et très efficace dans ce que nous faisons. Et dans ces 5 priorités, la question de la parité du genre n'était pas une priorité. C'est légitime. D'autant plus que cette question est institutionnalisée entre-temps. On discute des budgets, on discute de l'efficacité, de l'efficience des épargnes. On doit évoluer, on doit s'adapter. Si on avait un énorme problème de genre, on a une guerre en Ukraine, madame, on a d'autres problèmes en ce moment, et la question du genre reste importante, mais elle n'a plus besoin d'avoir un représentant spécial. La Suisse a pris cette décision simplement en faisant une pondération des problèmes et de la gravité de la situation que le monde traverse actuellement. Et je sais que certaines décisions peuvent déplaire, ça fait partie aussi de la politique, mais on ne peut pas simplement toujours ajouter une couche et ne jamais changer les priorités, autrement on n'avancera jamais. Et c'est notre attitude, notre manière de faire.
Merci, M. Cassis. Il n'y a que 2 questions. There are 2 questions left. So I would like to start first with Monsieur Thomas Porte from France. I don't know if he's in the... okay. Monsieur Porte, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous sommes dans un moment où la loi du plus fort est en train d'être généralisée. On l'a vu à quelques kilomètres d'ici en Ukraine, on le voit en Palestine, en République démocratique du Congo, au Liban, au Soudan. Et pour se prémunir de cette brutalité-là, nous avons un outil à notre disposition, certes imparfait, mais qui est le droit international. Et l'OSCE, elle est née dans ce cadre-là, et nous sommes en plus ici dans une ville où 2 instances très importantes du droit international sont présentes, la CPI et la CIJ. Et je regrette parfois que l'organisation soit silencieuse quand il y a des attaques contre ces instances et contre des représentants des instances internationales. On a vu notamment les sanctions, les calomnies qui sont abattues sur la rapporteure spéciale des Nations Unies pour les territoires occupés, Francesca Albanese. On a vu des pays comme la Hongrie et les États-Unis mener des opérations pour tenter de la faire taire. Et je crois que l'instance de dialogue multilatéral au sein de laquelle nous siégeons aujourd'hui, elle n'aurait plus de sens s'il n'y avait plus de droit international. Elle n'aurait plus vocation à exister, vous l'avez dit vous-même. Quelle autre instance est capable de réunir autant de pays autour d'une table pour discuter? Et est-ce qu'il est envisageable, Monsieur le Président, qu'à l'avenir, quand des représentants des Nations Unies sont attaqués de manière aussi forte, que notre organisation ait une parole claire, qu'on partage ou pas, mais qu'on défende les instances internationales et leurs représentants qui aujourd'hui sont les garants de notre boussole? Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Porte. The Chairman in Office has the floor now.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Portes de la France, pour votre question. Il est indéniable qu'après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, la construction des Nations Unies et du droit international qui est allé avec a constitué la base d'un souhait d'un monde basé sur les règles, d'un monde qui puisse résoudre de manière pacifique les conflits et parfois juridiques les conflits, justement pour éviter de passer à la violence. Force est de constater aujourd'hui que les organisations multilatérales et l'ordre international sont remis en question par bien d'États, en particulier par les plus puissants. Or, il serait illusoire de penser qu'en faisant plus de bruit avec des haut-parleurs, on puisse faire changer cette manière de procéder. Nous estimons qu'il est beaucoup plus important de faire des actions très concrètes, de chercher de parler directement avec ces personnes et non pas de faire du bruit médiatique que nous savons très bien ne va rien changer dans la situation. C'est une attitude, là aussi, vous pouvez choisir l'haut-parleur comme instrument, ou vous pouvez choisir le dialogue humain comme instrument. Il y a des avantages et des désavantages et une efficacité qui est différente selon l'expérience que mon pays a pu faire au cours des décennies. Dans le monde idéal, on devrait être protégé de la violence que nous voyons maintenant, des guerres, des crises. C'est bien ce qu'on a voulu créer après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Mais l'être humain, hélas, ne se laisse pas, quelque part, piloter uniquement par les règles que la communauté humaine fait. Et la différence, vous voyez, c'est de savoir si on veut, quelque part, faire de la politique sur les principes pour le principe, ou bien si on veut faire une politique plus réelle qui, se basant sur les principes, cherche à trouver une efficacité de l'action. La Suisse a choisi la deuxième manière de faire, et c'est ce que nous faisons de manière cohérente sur le plan national et pendant cette année d'élection à la présidence de l'OSCE. Et vu qu'on est ici dans la ville de la paix et du droit, je tiens à souligner l'importance d'y rester attaché à ces institutions et en même temps de voir comment évoluer avec ces institutions, c'était la première question de cet après-midi, pour les adapter à des besoins divers, évolutifs de nos populations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cassis. We have one question left before we give the floor to the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Halis Talkilik from Turkey. Please, you have the floor.
Sayın Başkan, tüm delegasyonu saygıyla selamlıyorum. Ben sabahki daimi komitede alınan bir kararla ilgili bilgi almak istiyorum. Filistin'le ilgili uluslararası hukukun ve insan haklarının korunması ile ilgili bir karar tasarısı vardı. Ancak daimi komitede bu reddedildi. Ben bunun reddinin ne anlama geldiğini doğrusu merak ediyorum. Orada yaşanan acılar, orada yaşanan katliamlar, orada bebeklerin, çocukların, kadınların öldürüldüğünü, oradaki işgali biz görmediğimizde bunlar yaşanmamış mı sayılacak? Yoksa bizden sonraki kuşaklarda çocuklarımıza biz bu tarihi okuduklarında bu utancı onlara yaşatmalı mıyız? Tabii ki Ukrayna'da yaşanan acılara duyarsız kalmamalıyız, kalmıyoruz. Ancak bizler Agit parlamenterler olarak Gazze'de, Filistin'de yaşanan insanlık dramını görmezden gelmemeliydik. Dolayısıyla bu karar tasarısının, ek karar tasarısının reddediliyor olması gerçekten bizi insanlık adına utandırıyor, üzüyor. Agit'in konuşmaktan çekinmemesi lazım, tartışmaktan çekinmemesi lazım ve insanlığın yaşadığı acılarda kategorik yaklaşmaması lazım. Nerede acı yaşanıyorsa, nerede işgal varsa, nerede insanlar katlediliyorsa bunlara ortak tavır geliştirmeliyiz ve sesimizi yükseltmeliyiz. Bize düşen bunlar. Ben karar tasarısının çıkarılmasının sebebini öğrenmek istiyorum. Bunu sormak istedim. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very thank you very much for the question. First, I think this is not a question for the chairman in office. It's something that it was discussed this morning. If Mr. Cassis allows me, just very simple, we have a rules of procedure system in which all the supplementary items are submitted together. There was one delegation who suggested that this item had to be discussed, has to be voted separately, and then at the moment of the voting, there were more delegations against the inclusion of this point to be debated, as the delegations were in favor of having it in the debating system. So in the end, it was not even about the content, it was the fact that there were a majority of the delegations against the fact that we could debate this. So, but I think I want to explain it because you requested, but this was not a question for the president, for the chairman in office. I would like to say thank you to Ignacio Cassis. Thank you for your time. Thank you also for inviting us to Lugano, to the Ministerial Council. The Bureau will take place in Lugano on the 2nd of December. So again, thank you very much for your time, and we are not going to stop. We say goodbye to Mr. Cassis, and I would like to give the floor to the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Ms. Petra Bayer. Please take the floor, and I will say goodbye also to Mr. Cassis. Thank you very much, Mr. Cassis.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we already were told about it. Look around you. We are here in the Hague, the city the world chose when it decided that power needs a judge. It was not an accident, it was a statement, and I want to make a statement today too. The rules-based international order is not in crisis because international law is weak. It is in crisis because too many of us have been timid to defending it. That ends here, that ends now. Europe is at war, not metaphorically, literally. A permanent member of the UN Security Council is killing civilians, destroying cities, and deporting children. The response of the international community will define the character of this century, not the next one, of this one. So let me be direct about where I stand and where the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe stands. We stand for accountability, not when it is convenient, but when it costs something. We stand for the rule of law, not as a phrase to fill speeches, but as a principle to build institutions around. And we and I stand here in this room as your partners, because the threats we face do not care about boundaries between our mandates. Disinformation attacks OSCE states and Council of Europe member states alike. Democratic backsliding does not stop at institutional borders. Hybrid warfare is hybrid precisely because it hits everything at once. Elections, courts, media, energy system, trust itself. You cannot fight it alone, neither can we. But together, 46 Council of Europe member states, the broadest human rights system in the world, 320 parliamentarians with a political mandate and the legal tools to act, together we are formidable. And I want this assembly to know what pace brings to this partnership. We established the Special Tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine, here in The Hague, because justice needs an address. "36 countries plus the European Union signed already the agreement, including Australia and Costa Rica, and it is open for more. Maybe also some of your countries would like to be among those who seek justice for atrocities. Every single one is welcome, even outside Europe. We suspended Russia. We monitor democratic standards from Reykjavik to Tbilisi, and sometimes we do that together. We both have skin in that game. But I'm not here to list achievements, I'm here to propose something more ambitious. The founding generation of international institutions like us made a bet. They bet that if we build enough shared structures, enough common law, enough mutual accountability, enough reasons to talk before we fight, you can make war between member states in these institutions unthinkable. For 70 years, that bet paid off. We are now in a moment when someone is trying to prove that bad wrong. And the only answer is to double down, not less, but more law, more accountability, not less, more cooperation between institutions like ours, not less. The Helsinki Final Act was not just a document, it was a declaration that even divided Europe could agree on rules in 1975. In the shadow of the Cold War, and if that generation can do, then we also can do it now. I think we don't have any excuse that we have to defend it now as well. So, dear friends, more than 1 billion people live in the OSCE area. They did not elect us to manage decline. They elected us to hold the line. So here is what I think, what I ask this assembly, to be partner that matches the moment, supports the institutions that upholds international law, demand accountability when states violate it. And when the pressure becomes to look away, and the pressure will come, remember why we are here in The Hague. We are here because someone long time ago decided that might should not equal right. The idea is worth fighting it, so let's fight it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Petra, for being here with us today, and I really appreciate, because I think both the Council of Europe, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and of course the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE have to be able to work together, to work closely, to monitor elections, and to avoid any duplicities, as Mr. Cassis said. And I think it's a good opportunity to, let's say, strengthen our cooperation and our work together. So really, again, thank you for being here with us, and I hope that you will stay for more. And now I would like to invite you to discuss the first supplementary item. We have actually 12 speakers, 12. So we have time, and I will leave you 3 minutes, but I will not allow you more than 3 minutes. So please respect the timing. So we will now proceed with the consideration of the supplementary item on crimes against humanity and war crimes committed by the Russian Federation, the need to release prisoners of war and civilian detainees, and to ensure the return of Ukrainian children, proposed by Vice President Mikita Botorayev. I remind members that under Rule 21, this supplementary item has been referred directly to the plenary. The vote that will be taken this afternoon is therefore final. This item will not be reopened for the adoption of the final day, on the final day of the annual session. So now I would like to give the floor to Vice President Botorayev to present this supplementary item. Dear Mikita, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished colleagues. The humanitarian dimension of the negotiations must be treated neither as a secondary track nor as a collection of goodwill gestures. The release of prisoners of war, civilian detainees, and children is not a concession that Russia may trade for political or economic benefits. There are binding obligations under international humanitarian law. As of early June, Russia was believed to be unlawfully detaining approximately 16,000 Ukrainian civilians, hundreds of them without any connections incommunicado. More than 20,500 cases of unlawful deportation of or forced transfer of Ukrainian children had been officially reported, while only around 2,200 children had been successfully returned from deportation, forced transfer, or temporarily occupied territories. Behind every number is a person whose family may have received no reliable information for months or years. Ukraine therefore calls for an immediate humanitarian package implemented independently of progress on other tracks, an all-for-all exchange of prisoners of war, the unconditional release of all unlawfully detained civilians, including journalists, human rights defenders, and the 3 OSCE staff members, full and verifiable information on every deported or forcibly transferred Ukrainian child with guaranteed access and safe return, regular family contact and unhindered access for the ICRC and other competent independent actors to all places of detention, the effective arrangements for identifying missing persons, transferring the remains of the deceased and investigating torture, executions, sexual violence, and enforced disappearances. There must be no amnesty or impunity for torture, executions of all prisoners, the deportation of children or other international crimes. Accountability is not an obstacle to peace. It is one of the conditions that makes peace sustainable. Ukraine therefore continues to call for full support for the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, the International Claims Commission, and the broader international accountability architecture. The message from The Hague must be unmistakable. Peace cannot be built on impunity. A ceasefire cannot legitimize occupation. Dialogue cannot mean silence about aggression. And international law cannot survive if its enforcement depends on the consent that the state violating it. Please support the supplementary item, crimes against humanity and war crimes committed by Russian Federation, the need to release prisoners of war and civilian detainees, and to ensure the return of Ukrainian children. I thank you, colleagues.
So thank you, Mikita. I apologize because the president of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe is leaving. So now we have one speaker less. I would like to first tell you that the first speaker will be Honorable Judy White, and then she will be followed by Ms. Karina Odebrick. So, Madam White, you have the floor. Ms. White, you have the floor from Canada. Microphone.
Sorry. Thank you. Esteemed colleagues, I'm taking the floor today to express my support for this supplementary item, which among other things calls for Russia to release Ukrainian prisoners of war, the detained civilians, and to return unlawfully transferred and deported Ukrainian children. This SI is of particular importance to Canada. My country co-chairs 2 key initiatives in this area: the Kiev-based Working Group on the Human Dimension of Ukraine's Peace Formula. This initiative focuses on the return of prisoners of war, detained civilians, and deported Ukrainian children. The other initiative, the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. Discussions within these coalitions have focused on identifying diplomatic strategies to address the human impacts of Russia's war of aggression. As well, they have explored ways to improve information sharing on the whereabouts, health conditions, legal status of the prisoners of war, unlawfully detained civilians, and deported children. This SI also condemns the deliberate destruction by the Russian Federation of Ukraine's cultural and spiritual heritage. According to UNESCO, as of the 10th of June 2026, just last month, 536 sites in Ukraine have been confirmed as damaged. To this long list, we must sadly add the Kiev Pershka Lavra Monastery. This SI further highlights the numerous Russian strikes on civilian and energy infrastructure, which have on many occasions deprived the Ukrainian population of heating, water, and electricity. Canada has consistently underlined that humanitarian consequences of these attacks, which were particularly intense last winter, are profound and devastating, and they may very well constitute war crimes or crimes against humanity. Canada strongly supports efforts to investigate war crimes and violations of international humanitarian law committed by Russia against prisoners of war and civilians, and remains committed to ensuring accountability based on the findings of such investigations. To support this process, we, through the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, have opened an investigation into allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine, and we continue to invite individuals who have witnessed or experienced such acts to come forward and share information. This SI also calls on participating states to increase economic, political, and diplomatic pressure on the Russian Federation and on those who support its war of aggression. Canada has consistently expanded its sanctions regime in support of this objective. On June 16, 2026, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a new wave of sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, its energy revenues, and disinformation actors, with the aim of increasing pressure on Russia to negotiate an end to its invasion. To date, Canada has imposed sanctions on over 3,400 individuals and entities in the context of Russia's war of aggression, as well on more than 600 vessels linked to Russia's shadow fleet. Ending Russia's aggression, seeking justice, and rebuilding Ukraine remains of the utmost importance to Canada, and achieving these objectives will require sustained international cooperation. I encourage all OSCE PA participating states to continue to work closely with allies across military, humanitarian, and diplomatic channels to strengthen Ukraine's defense and address the human consequences of this war. Walalio, merci, thank you, and I invite you to support this supplementary item.
Thank you, Ms. White. Just again, please try to stick to the time, because if not, we won't be able to end properly. So now Ms. Odebrink has the floor, and then she will be followed by Mr. Krzysztof Truskolaski from Poland. So Ms. Odebrink, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear President. And first, I would like to start with thanking Mr. Mikita Putorayev and the Ukrainian delegation for this extremely important supplementary item, which I support the strongest. I think I will not repeat what Mr. Putorayev has said, but during this annual session, I will present my second report as now Special Envoy to the International Coalition for the Returning of the Ukrainian Children. I will present my second report during the annual session, and I also would like to invite you all to the side event on this topic. I had the privilege and the honor to attend and to take part in a conference or meeting this week. It was the Council of Europe and their consultation group of Ukraine. And it was me, it was the Special Envoy from the Council of Europe, it was also the UN representative on child under armed conflict. It was very important for us three to meet and to give our pictures to the consultation group for Ukraine, because it is exactly like Ms. Petra Bayer said to us, we need to cooperate, because that makes us stronger. And we need to hold the line to Russia. I think that's very important. We need more sanctions. We need to use the frozen assets for the sake of the Ukrainian children and the Ukrainian people. And we can't have any long, sustainable peace if we don't have the children or the prisoners or the SMM employees, all of them, all who are affected of this war must be on the top of the agenda, because it is about the people. It's not about concrete or other things. It's about the people. So thank you, Mr. Puttarayo, for your essay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karina Montebrick. And then I would like to give the floor to the member of the Polish Parliament, and then I will give the floor to Mr. Marius Arion Nilsson from Norway. So you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. President, dear colleagues, with its war of aggression against Ukraine, Russia brutally violated the international law, in particular in 1975 Helsinki Decalogue. As the chairman of the Polish delegation, I want to say that we do not see any signs of Russian willingness to end the hostilities or to truly engage in any peace processes. No matter what, we support Ukraine in exercising its right to defend itself. And our thoughts are with all the Ukrainian victims, especially after the recent devastating and brutal attacks on Kyiv and other cities. The Russian war remains the most important security threat and challenge to the OSCE area. Despite adopting the budget for the first time in 5 years, the OSCE continues to be in a progressing crisis. As the Russian war continues in its 5th year, we see no possibility to waive the existing policy of no business as usual, no engagement with the aggressor, Russia and its supporter, Belarus. Any talks can only begin when the Russian war is over. Furthermore, we appeal the swift chairpersonship in office at the OSCE structures to actively exercise pressure on Moscow to finally release the free Ukrainian citizens, former employees of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, who are still in a Russian custody. The OSCE's focus must remain on supporting the victim of the aggression in Ukraine. Poland is fully committed to the OSCE support program for Ukraine, to which we have contributed over €1.3 million so far. We appeal to the other participating states to be a part of the effort as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Now I would like to give the floor to Marius Arion Nilsson, and he will be followed by Senator Roger Wicker from the United States. So, Marius, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair, and dear colleagues. Norway strongly condemns Russia's massive attack on Kyiv on the 2nd of July. Once again, civilians and civilian infrastructure were targeted, demonstrating Russia's continued disregard for international law and willingness to carry on this meaningless war regardless of cost. Norway remains firmly committed to supporting Ukraine. Our support enjoys broad backing across all political parties in the Norwegian Parliament, the Storting. We fully support this supplementary item because it addresses some of the most serious consequences of Russia's aggression: war crimes, crimes against humanity, the unlawful detention of civilians and prisoners of war, and the deportation of Ukrainian children. Accountability is essential, and those responsible must be brought to justice, including through the International Criminal Court and a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. We also value the important documentation provided through the OSCE Moscow mechanism. On Monday, the Norwegian delegation will visit an International Commission on Missing Persons here in The Hague to learn more about its important work in identifying missing persons, supporting families, and contributing to accountability efforts. Norway strongly supports the immediate release of Ukrainian prisoners of war and unlawfully detained civilians. Reports of torture, ill treatment, and enforced disappearances are deeply concerning. Finally, we fully support efforts to return forcibly transferred and deported Ukrainian children safely home. Supporting this resolution reflects Norway's unwavering commitment and support to Ukraine, the importance of international law, accountability and justice for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Now Senator Wicker has the floor, and he will be followed by Ms. Ruan from Ireland. So, Senator Wicker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, fellow delegates, for sponsoring this supplemental item. The war against Ukraine is an outrage. The war against Ukraine is Vladimir Putin's war, pure and simple. Let's put the blame where it deserves to be. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, pure and simple. Vladimir Putin is guilty of genocide, pure and simple. When Vladimir Putin claims he's liberating only Russian-speaking Ukrainians living in the Donbass and elsewhere, we hear echoes from 80 years ago. These are the exact words of Adolf Hitler at the beginning of World War II. Indeed, Mr. Putin stands head and shoulders along people like Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, Joseph Stalin. That's who is responsible for this war. When Mr. Putin demonstrates the depths of his cruelty by by forcing his prey on Ukraine's next generation without mercy, brainwashing them, kidnapping them, forcing them into service of the Russian army, Vladimir Putin is committing an act of pure genocide, and this needs to be recognized. Ukraine has done nothing to deserve this. Europe has done nothing to deserve this. Humankind has done nothing to deserve the aggression of this greedy war criminal who steals from his own people, Vladimir Putin. So let's condemn this war on behalf of the people of Ukraine. Let's condemn this war on behalf of the OSCE, on behalf of all of the people of Europe, on behalf of all of humanity. And let's condemn this war on behalf of the people of Russia who have no say in their government. Let's condemn this war on behalf of the 500,000 Russian men and boys that have been sent to slaughter through the greed and genocide and war crimes of Vladimir Putin. Freedom to all of Europe, freedom to Ukraine, and freedom to the people of Russia from the greed and criminality of Vladimir Putin.
So thank you, Senator Wicker. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Ruan from Ireland, and she will be followed by Monsieur Michel Herbillon from France. So, Lynn,
thank you, Chair.
You have the floor.
While we strongly and rightly speak about the war crimes against Ukraine here today, it remains beyond comprehension to suggest that war crimes against Palestine is unconnected under the banner of international law. International law has to apply equally for it to have any standing. The Helsinki Final Act is a commitment to human rights and international law. If those principles only matter to the OSCE when it is politically convenient, then those principles mean nothing at all. Along with the ICC's ruling on Russia's aggression in Ukraine, the International Court of Justice has made clear that Israel's occupation is unlawful and that third states must not aid or assist in maintaining that illegal situation. The issue is not only about Palestine, it is about rules-based international order the OSCE was created to defend. When we erode Ukraine's protections, when we allow the abandonment of the rights of Palestinians. The European Union, so many countries here today, are Israel's largest regional trading partners, and together with the United States, continues to politically, militarily and economically support Israel. At the same time, European states facilitate trade, investment, research cooperation and export of dual-use technologies, all while acknowledging that settlements are illegal under international law. The insistence on ignoring Palestine and their right to protection under international law does a disservice to Ukraine through the creation of weak international institutions. They cannot be uncoupled from one another. When Russia violates international law, the Assembly rightly speaks and acts. When Israel does, the majority of you silence debate. Here in The Hague, the home of the ICC and the ICJ, the OSCE block a supplementary item on international law and Palestine. If the OSCE cannot consistently defend international law, then it is not defending international law at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ron. Now, Monsieur Herbillon has the floor, and he will be followed by Ms. Özgül Saki from Turkey. So, Monsieur Herbillon, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Parmi les réalités odieuses de cette guerre d'agression de la Russie contre l'Ukraine, il y en a une souffrance qui nous est particulièrement vive et intolérable et qui meurtrit le cœur de tout être humain, c'est le sort des enfants ukrainiens. Il y a eu près de 20 000 enfants qui ont été transférés de force et déportés vers la Russie depuis le début du conflit dans le cadre d'une politique russe d'intégration forcée et de négation de leur identité ukrainienne. Alors ce phénomène recouvre des réalités diverses: enlèvement d'enfants, séparation forcée des familles, transfert forcé d'enfants issus d'orphelinats en territoire conquis par la Russie, adoption forcée par des familles russes, enfants transformés en soldats contre leur propre pays. Cette situation est évidemment intolérable et je veux souligner le rôle de la France dans ce combat pour faire revenir les enfants qui ont été déportés, pour les faire revenir dans leur pays en Ukraine. La France a annoncé le renforcement du soutien des Nations Unies et le soutien aux ONG pour l'accueil et la protection des enfants ukrainiens. Elle a pris l'initiative de réunions du Conseil de sécurité sur la situation humanitaire en Ukraine et sur la situation des enfants ukrainiens. J'ai dit quelle était notre priorité. Il est important de savoir qu'on parle toujours des territoires conquis, des territoires repris, des territoires perdus, mais il faut aussi évoquer les gens, et en particulier les enfants. On parle des équipements, on parle des habitations détruites, des infrastructures qu'il faut reconstruire, mais il faut aussi réparer, reconstruire les êtres humains, et parmi eux, les enfants. Et je crois qu'il faudrait vraiment, lorsqu'on parle des réparations dans les négociations, évoquer ce sujet essentiel pour la reconstruction de la société ukrainienne. Et au-delà de la disparition des enfants, il y a aussi beaucoup de civils qui sont gravement handicapés suite au bombardement par drone et qui nécessiteront une prise en charge toute leur vie. Alors en conclusion, notre priorité est en effet d'assurer le retour de tous les enfants ukrainiens. C'est une belle mission pour notre organisation qui doit se mobiliser à ce sujet, car cette situation nous heurte violemment, car elle met en cause ce qu'il y a de plus précieux, la dignité de la condition humaine, à commencer par ces êtres qui sont en devenir et que sont les enfants. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Herbillon. Now the floor is for Ms. Özgül Saki, and then she will be followed by Igor Shinak from Moldova. So, Özgül, you have the floor.
Thanks, President Pons. We talk about crimes against humanity and war crimes in Ukraine. We deeply concerned about that. Unfortunately, these crimes are on the rise in different parts of the world, such as in African countries, in the Middle East, Gaza, Syria, and many others. Why can no one prevent these crimes? Let's talk honestly. This morning, Standing Committee voted and removed supplementary items human rights and international law in Palestine from agenda, deeming it unworthy of the consideration. This is huge mistake. The vast majority of the proposals are related to Ukraine. Yes, of course, we should discuss this issue. But if you separated the Palestine and Ukraine issues from each other, you cannot solve either of them because they are closely related to each other. If you criticize Russia, but not United States, not Israel, no one will trust our sense of the justice. And also, this is double standard. This is a kind of discrimination. From this perspective, now will we be able to defend European values? You constantly emphasize always, we must finally realize that a lasting solution is impossible without addressing the problems equally, regardless of the country in which it takes place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. And then now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Shiriak from Moldova, and he will be followed by Vili Kaunisto from Finland. So, Igor, you have the floor.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, we meet today at a time when the principles that have safeguarded peace in Europe for decades are under unprecedented pressure. International law, sovereignty, and territorial integrity are not longer abstract concepts. For my country, Republic of Moldova, they are materials of survival. Moldova know what Russian aggression means. When our people decided to choose their own future and build a democratic state, we were attacked. In 1992, Russian-backed forces, supported by Russia's 40th Army, launched the war on the Transnistria. More than 30 years later, Russian troops remain illegally stationed on part of our territory. Today, the same aggressor is trying to destroy Ukraine. For Moldova, Russia's war is not a distant conflict. We share 1,200 kilometers border with Ukraine. Russian missiles violate our airspace. Shahed drones have crashed in our villages. Attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure have left hundreds of thousands of Moldovan citizens without reliable electricity and safe drinking water. Yet, Moldova not given up. Despite unprecedented hybrid attacks, disinformation campaign, and attempt to buy elections, our citizens have voted 3 times in the last 2 years. 3 times they choose democracy. 3 times they choose European Union path. But military aggression is only one part of today's challenges. Alongside conventional war, Russia is waging a cognitive war against our society, trying to manipulate public opinion. This is why defending international law also means defending through democratic resilience and free societies. Supporting Ukraine is not only an act of solidarity, it is an investment in the security of the entire OSCE area. Every day that Ukraine defends its freedom, it also protects Moldova and strengthens European security. The Republic of Moldova will continue to stand with Ukraine, defend international law, and work together with all our partners to preserve peace, democracy, and the rule that protect every sovereign nation. We fully support the supplementary item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shiriak. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Kaunisto from Finland, and then Mr. John Lahart will close the debate, and then we will go to the voting system, voting mode. So, Mr. Kaunisto, you have the floor from Finland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listening to President Zelensky and Mr. Poturayev reminds me of history of Finland also. I come from a city that is 60 miles from the border of Russia, and in the long history of Finland, even before independence, 3 times the Russian troops have crossed my home city, and 3 times they have invaded the whole country. Both times, all the times, they have used terrorism towards civilians, and they have used terrorism and kidnappings of children. What has happened 300 years ago is happening today in Ukraine. Russia doesn't stop. It needs to be stopped. Full support for Ukraine, whether it's ammunition, weapons, or whether it's getting the Ukrainian children back home. It means defending freedom and peace in Europe. Finland has full support for Ukraine, and we support the supplementary item, which is a right step towards right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague, dear Ville. So now I would like to give the floor to Jon Lahart to close the debate, and then we'll go to the vote procedure. Thank you. Jon, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. President, and thanks to Ukraine and to The Hague for hosting this session. Ireland supports the supplementary item proposed by the Ukrainian delegation. And Ireland has significantly increased its assistance since Russia's invasion in 2022. In April of this year, the Irish government announced an additional package for humanitarian aid and for peace building. In December, a Ukraine-Ireland partnership roadmap was also signed. As a militarily neutral state, Ireland has supplied non-lethal military assistance in significant volumes to Ukraine. And we've absorbed happily and with great welcome thousands of displaced Ukrainians, providing temporary protection status to them, access to healthcare, access to education, social welfare supports, and the right to work. Our support was reinforced during President Zelensky's visit to Dublin on Wednesday of this week as part of the launch of the Irish presidency of the European Union. In relation to the motion put forward, the denial by Russia of basic living requirements, such as heat, water, and energy, the scale of the relentless onslaught, the targeting of schools, preschools, culture, and religious buildings, the illegal detention of thousands of Ukrainians, the evidence of ill treatment, beatings, electric shock, mock executions, instances of sexual violence, torture, continued and consistent war crimes, grave human rights violations, the systematic indoctrination and militarization of even children, the attempt to wipe out children's identity and individualism. All of these emphasize the need for international organizations to stand up against this aggression, to stand up and support, universally support, those international institutions, many of them who find their headquarters here in Den Haag, which are our only buffer between order and chaos. And in doing so, to recognize that we cannot cherry-pick the conflicts over which the rules of these organizations apply. The actions of Russia in Ukraine should act as a warning to the rest of Europe, the Western world, and the international community. This is how Russia acts and behaves. We're in a battle and a struggle with a regime without values or a moral compass. So we support this supplementary item, and in particular we support the protection of children and their right to live innocent lives and fulfill their potential as human beings. The Irish delegation representatives supports this Ukrainian-sponsored motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, John. And I think I would like to ask to Mikita Potorayev if he wants to take the floor to respond or to comment or to add anything that he would like to do, well to say. I'm sorry.
Dear colleagues, let me thank you for your support. We know in Ukraine that we can always rely on all delegations in this parliamentary assembly. We know that here we are in a circle of really real friends and real supporters. So thank you again. Thank you that you keep this genocide war against Ukraine in constant focus of your attention. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Nikita, for your words. And we will now proceed with the consideration of... Oh, sorry. I'm already tired, I think. So please, now we will now move to the adoption of paragraphs and consideration of the single amendments submitted to the draft resolution. Copies of the amendment have been made available. When we get to the amendment, I will call the proposer of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Vice President Potorayev, if he has not already spoken, for his opinion. I ask speakers on the amendment to observe a time limit of 1 minute. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. And we are also required to vote on every paragraph to which there are no amendments, as we have done previously to save time and to avoid many votes on items that have broad support. If no amendment has been tabled to a paragraph, and if nobody requests a vote on a paragraph, we can consider it adopted. Needless to say, at any time a specific vote is requested, we will do so. So, I think I can take paragraphs 1 to 31 together. Does anyone want a vote on any of these paragraphs? So the paragraphs 1 to 31 are agreed. This is the first thing. So amendment 1, I call Ms. Odebrink from Sweden to propose amendment 1 to insert a new paragraph after paragraph 31. Ms. Odebrink, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, dear President. I think I have spoken in favor of my amendment, and I hope that the plenary session and the OSCE can support it. So I think that's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? What is Vice President Potorayev's opinion of the amendment?
I ask all colleagues to support the amendment.
So I put the amendment 1 to vote. Will all those in favor of the amendment please raise their voting cards? Please raise voting cards if you are in favor. Please, we have to count, please. I apologize. Now, I would like to ask the ones who are against this amendment. Please raise your card. So I don't see any amendment, any vote against. And now, of course, I have to ask if there is any abstention. So Amendment 1 is adopted. Thank you very much, Karina, for your amendment. So now we will now take paragraphs 32 to 47. Does anyone want to vote on any of these paragraphs? No? So paragraphs 32 to 47 are agreed. So we will now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution, of course, as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution, as amended, of course, please raise their voting cards? As amended, huh? (115 in favor). So now I would like to ask you, the ones who are against, please raise the voting cards. I don't know if the Belgium MP, no. No? Okay. So any abstention? So the draft resolution is adopted. Mr. Potorayev. So now good news. This concludes our session today. Committees will meet tomorrow morning. Please, just one sec. This evening we are invited to gather at the Kunstmuseum, which is very close to the conference center. Delegates are invited to walk there. The buses outside the conference center will be hidden back to hotels in the city center for those not participating in the dinner. So thank you very much, and let's enjoy a little bit of time here in the Hague tonight. Thank you very much.